been here before, but today in a different perspective, in a different capacity. Eric Pinto, engineer and environmentalist. Odd combination, but Eric is known for his activism in Goa from the 70s. He has a fascinating story to tell. Maybe it will come out somewhere along the way where he shares with us how he got involved in the early environmental campaigns under chartered engineer Urban Lobo in the 70s and Matani Saldana and all that. But that we will let it surface as and when it does. So this is part of a series where I'm trying to talk to citizens who have their own understanding of the state and how, what I'd call Goa's runaway politics is affecting all of us. So, without too much ado and without taking too much of your time, my basic argument is that the politics we see in Goa is obviously going wrong. It's going very badly wrong. We'll not go into why that's happening. We'll not go into who's making it happen. We'll not go into blaming parties, but we'll go into seeing what's happening and why it's affecting the average citizen and how. Eric, your views on this?
Um, it's a it's such a massive question. Politics has been affecting Goa because politics enters into our entire lives. So when politics goes a bit awry, then our lives uh, go a bit awry. I remember the first when I was a young college boy. The first thing that drew me into this kind of you can call it politics or politics of environmentalism was the Zuari Agro Chemical pollution.
1973.
No, this was in 1970, not in 73. This was in 1974, 1974, 75. I think that's the time. I may be a bit wrong here in a year somewhere, but it was this huge factory that initially people were opposed. They called it the Birla factory. It was Zuari Agro Chemicals, and they were letting in polluted ammonia into a big holding tank, with the result that a lot of the ammonia was coming into people's wells downstream, and they were getting all sores. And the people who jumped into this earliest was Urban Lobo and Matani Saldana.
And to interrupt, there was huge fish mortality along the coast.
There was huge fish mortality
There
along
were
the
environmental
river
protests.
courses. It was, yeah, it was,
And 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 and
initially.
and sorry. And to bring it also close to our topic today, the politicians of the day, the government, of course, was siding
The
the
factory.
factory, and the opposition, as usual, didn't play much of an effective role. So the movement went into the hands of people and concerned citizens and environmentalists and engineers. Carry on. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, surprisingly, it was a Congress government, but at that point of time, it was the Youth Congress
No,
who were
no,
part
you're
of the
getting it wrong.
Anti-Pollution Citizens Committee.
74 would have been a MG government in Goa, but at the national
No,
level, it
so
was a
so
Congress.
so I think it would be more like 76.
Yeah, but it would still be MGP till 79 was MGP. So in at the national level, there was a Congress in power, of course.
Yes, maybe. Yes, I think so. So there were people like Giri Sardesai, Noel Fernandez, and even John Fernandez at the time who were very vocal about the pollution. We
About
used
the
to have
pollution.
several meetings at in Panjim, and we used to deliberate on how it had to go. And finally, Caritas joined in the effort, and we used to get water. Drinking water was scarce because all the wells and the streams and everything were polluted with ammonia. You could actually smell the ammonia coming from the streams.
In
It was
Sankwal,
that bad.
in Sankwal.
In Sankwal and Belsound, these were the two villages that were affected the most because they were downstream the hill on which Zuari Agro Chemicals stood. And the fish in both these villages, the fish died the smell was terrible. You could actually smell the ammonia that was coming from the water sources, where be they wells or even streams, and there are lots of streams in all our villages. And from then on, it went into the Ramponkar problem, and when it went into the Ramponkar problem, there was this big debate about what is development, because a lot of people asked, is development only enabling the local fishermen, or making is it only centered on the local fishermen, where we keep them at that state of underdevelopment, or do we? So this is where politics comes in conflict with development. And or do we enable them to go further, catch more? And this was then a very big talking point. It was a very big question thrown to us activists. What are you trying to do?
So
And in fact,
In the Raponkar movement, if I get it right, there were all these subsidies which were coming in to buy and set up trawlers, which were
yes,
a destructive technology, trawling in that sense, which destroyed the
yes,
seabed and all those kind of things. And the traditional fishermen got nothing out of it. And politicians played a dubious role that time also, in the sense that many of them actually got trawler subsidies and they were quite happy with what was going on.
exactly. There were
But
many.
the
There were many of the fishermen, and I remember quite a few who fell for the subsidies and they left the Ramponkar movement while I was still there. While I could see this, I could see, because a trawler meant incomes going from like a few thousand rupees or whatever per rampon or whatever it went. A trawler was owned not by a community, which the Ramponkar movement was all about. It was owned by a single person who got a subsidy from the government, and then his income went 20-fold up, because fish at the time was, a very fishing at the time was uh, there was no blanket on where you fished until the 5 kilometer thing came along. So they
five
used to
fathom
just
rule,
go and fish 5 kilometer
five fathom, I think,
territorial
five
waters.
fathom, five fathom,
Five, five
five
fathom, I
fathom.
think it's
Yeah.
5 fathom, yeah. Or 5 kilometers, I forget now. The five, it was the Rampon cars were restricted to that. I think it was 5 kilometers. Then beyond that,
No,
the trawls could operate.
Eric, what I'm trying to understand is that between that point of time where there was this conflict between, economy and environment, and today where there is again the conflict, it still sustains. The lobbies have grown many times, and the stakes have grown many times, and there are huge forces at stake. So, how do you see the changes that we have seen in Goa in the last 10, 20, 30 years affecting the citizen now, in that sense, today?
Today, the problems have grown because the citizens don't have a voice anymore. They have been dumbed down to an extent. The movements of the 70s and 80s did yield a result. I mean, whatever they were, the Ramponkar movement brought about a change in the concept of overfishing. There were few laws that were taken up and they were made. They said, okay, trawlers can only be trawling at a certain distance from the shore. Those points were taken on board. Today we find that you do not. You look at the Mole project; it's so environmentally destructive. I've got to give this example because this is what stands out. It's so environmentally destructive, but it has been pushed down the throats because there has not been a chance of a dialogue.
During a pandemic, during a severe pandemic, that too.
And even if it was not during the pandemic, I think they would have been pushing this down, because this is a series of steps that have been taking place for the last 15 years. Uh, Today I was just no, yesterday I was driving down from a good doctor friend. She's she had a problem with the house, so I had to just go and have a look at it. And as I was driving, I said, I will not take the highway. I'll go along the old villages. So I came down the hill. I passed through Taligaon. Then I passed through Santa Cruz and I passed through Mirces. And then I came to Ribanda. And as I came along, I saw this building structures, this huge 3 4 stories building structures in all these villages. And they have been almost forced down into all these villages without any due process of ensuring whether they really fit in. So there has been a disconnect. I mean, these kind of little projects have caused a lot of, besides environmental destruction at local level, like fields filled up, water courses blocked, which is in Maces. It has happened, and I mean, it continues to flood. And basically, generally, the destruction of the the ecological the ecological foundations of the village economy, which
Hmm.
then move on to the state economy. So the distractions have started there.
Hmm.
And I mean, that has been, I think, the biggest grounds. If you ask people, the thing is that outsiders have come and settled here, and they have destroyed the place. And it's happening in villages. You can see that.
So what is
I
the
don't see how.
political? What's the political link for this? Like,
It's known as Baile. The Konkani name is Baile, the outsider theory.
no, how do politicians facilitate this in your view?
The politician, this was not something that happened overnight. It was a process that was discovered at village level. We did not have. If we wanted a license, we normally went to the sarpanch and got it, and you asked the sarpanch. My father himself was a sarpanch. So there came a new kind of breed that told the sarpanch or the village secretary, I need to build this building of 3 or 4 stories in this village. Now, you know what we will do? I will give you some money. Basically, I'll bribe you, and you allow us to do. And this is not a Goan concept at all. I mean, we did not know bribery back in the 70s and early 80s. We knew nothing about bribery. Bribery came down during those times, and it came with the outsider because they knew that certain things could be done with money. That was the first time that they discovered that money could give you things that you normally would not get through the normal processes of governance at village level. So that's where the breakdown started, and it was the village. Of course, as you know, the village belongs to. It did not at the time. The village or a district belongs to maybe a political party, or it. I remember I used to go to Saligaon from Porvorim in those days, and as I entered Saligaon, I think it was in the 80s, they said, you are now entering BJP territory because Saligaon was one of the first. So it may have been Congress. The Congress did not think of it, but the BJP thought of it. You are now entering a BJP village or a BJP constituency. So then the nexus began. The politician in power at that time worked along with the grassroots village panchayat, and he sometimes pushed on a project because he was in cahoots with some builder, and he was able to get something done which normally no other governor could get done. So this was the builder politician nexus,
Just,
which was
just,
the
just,
first thing in Goa.
just to add, Eric, I can give you another example, a slightly different kind, without taking names. There have been villages where the panchayats will support whoever is the MLA from whichever party their MLA comes from, and also probably help to make sure that he gets elected and his reign is continued. And on the other hand, the MLA, who whichever party is from, he's from, will support the same set of dubious characters in the panchayat to make sure that they have hegemony over the village in that sense. So it's a
Yes,
mutual kind of give and take, and both sides are quite happy with the situation. you
yes,
know so I've seen this. I've actually seen this. So like 30, 40 years, you find the same clique continuing in power, and they will support whoever is in power at Panjim will support whoever's in power in Delhi.
yeah,
Delhi will decide who stays in power in Panjim. So there is a breakdown of the system as such, and the effects are there for all of us to see, but I don't think we understand why exactly it happens. Coming to the next question, would it be accurate to say that the Goan politician learnt his land rackets from places like Maharashtra, where a small change in the FSI, a small bottlenecking of permission, a small rewriting of the rules of who gets permission and how, making it more money based rather than need based, has had a huge impact on the full real estate sector. Would you agree with that point of view?
Yes, I do. I do not know whether, my own reading is that it started from Delhi and not from Bombay and not from Maharashtra.
Hmm.
It started with Delhi. I've known the Delhi people who have come down. When you ask me about why it started with Goa being such a prized place to live in. Everyone says, it's such a peaceful place, it's such a beautiful place with the hills and the valleys, and the people are so nice and accommodative. So Goa is a dream destination. I mean, I have been across all India on my work and on my social work, and when I come across a lot of people, it may be even a social worker, and they say, "Oh, lovely Goa. Do you think I could get a plot piece of land over there or an apartment over there?" This is basically driven this is basically driven by an all India love for Goa, or so
Hmm.
the economics of the situation are the attraction of Goa as a place to live in, and that is driven. If it was not the case, then no one would want anything, and no one would say, I should buy land here because 5 years down the line I will ensure that the laws change, and the an orchard becomes a housing colony.
So regardless of parties, would you say that every all politicians
Regardless
have
of party, that's
most
true.
poli-
Regardless of party,
most politicians have had
it's
their
just
finger
these
in this pie?
politicians in general, regardless of party.
Nandakumar Kamath once put it very well. He said that this was 1985, if I'm not mistaken. In those days, the rackets and the lobbies and all were quite different. So he said that the big M and the five T's rule Goan politics, are the lobbies which rule Goan politics. The big M, of course, was mining in those days. It was big and still continue to be in fits and starts along the way, with ups and downs. The five T's were, if I remember rightly, I think I can't remember all five, but at least uh, tourism was just beginning. Tavernas, trawlers, uh, toddy tappers. I think toddy tappers were still, no, maybe I'm getting it wrong. And the remaining five, two other T's he mentioned as the lobbies. Then they were relatively travel was one lobby, transport lobby, which
Yeah,
was in the time
the
of
transport
ANC.
lobby was a big lobby.
That is pre-80, pre 1980. Then it lost its power.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Even in the 80s, it was. I do remember writing.
You did a
I do
study on that.
remember doing a study. I do
Can you tell
remember
us?
doing a study
Can
for
you
grid. I did it in the 90s,
tell?
and even then,
It's interesting to know about this
the
study. Just tell
transport
us.
lobby.
Just tell us about the study. Sorry for interrupting.
The study was, the study was the importance of transport in a very urbanized economy, which Goa was already becoming. We either had to look at mass transport, or we were already beginning to think of these things in the 80s, because it was driven by a certain band of intellectuals that looked at certain problems. How do we sort this out? And I got in touch with the British Road Research Laboratory, because uh, they had done tremendous research all over in the entire world, and they were looking at cities and towns, and then they were looking at how transport was so important in those days. And I took up a model. I took up a model which was being this thing by the British Road Research Laboratory, and I said, I cannot apply it here because it needs a person to sit in a bus for all our 256 routes we had. I don't know, whatever, 300 routes. It requires a person to sit in every bus and see the number of people getting off from beginning to end. And I said it's not possible. So we kept I worked it out myself. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look at the start of a route, the midpoint of a route, and the end of a route. And I'm going to keep three people there. And they will look at a bus and they'll say, okay, a bus is full, a bus is empty, and a bus is somewhere in between. And sometimes it was so full that we had a series of, you had the surveyor had a sheet of paper whereby he wrote down the number of the bus and the time it passed him, and whether it was full, empty, or chock full, or whatever. So we had a lot of routes which we had mapped out, and we knew what was the position of, which route was very heavily um, not populated, I mean heavily used. And when I looked and I got my research study done, I Rani at the time was the chief minister, and I do remember, I was very nervous when I gave him the report, and he said, "No, I'll study it and I'll look." And what it said is that a bus should not start at Mapsa and end at Kalangut. A bus should go about 250 odd kilometers. So if it does start at Kalangut, it starts at Kalangut, goes through Mapsa, and then goes to Perne and beyond, and it goes to a Mofasil village, and then it stops there. So you do not have point to point, like town to town routes as we have now. Now the Kadambas did do it. If you
Yeah, yeah,
remember,
they did do it because they would start from
they
a
did do it because the
rural
Kadambas,
area
yeah,
to another rural area, and with
yeah,
the towns in
they
between. Yeah,
did, they did implement it, and and hats off because um, Rane was very, he was I still see that, I still say that he was one of the most thinking chief ministers. I mean, he really thought about what was best for the state. At that time, even he could cut across the transport lobby, because I don't think the transport lobby like the Kadampas. At the time, it was a very strong lobby, which was, again, it was an MGP lobby, and he was breaking his back by doing the Kadamba. So
true.
the Kadambas then used to go at about, they used to do about 150 to 200 kilometers each bus. And they use this model. They started in a village, they passed by a town, then they went maybe down south, they went to Margao, and they went to Benoli or whatever. They went to a village
Right.
and stopped there. So the transport the transport sector needed, I mean, the Mapsa to Penjin bus system is crazy. It's 12 kilometers, and a bus gets just about 5 trips a day. But they make their money because they use old buses, they overcrowded. It's a very heavily used route. But that's again where we wanted to say, this is not a very good model. You are using very old buses and you're overcrowding. And I can similarly imagine the Mapsa to Kalangut system was not very, that's about 15 kilometers, and 5 trips per bus. It really did not, it did not really use the bus to its full capacity. But because of this kind of, we used, anyway, I don't want to use very technical, cost per trip, cost per passenger kilometer. This is the kind of language we used to be using, and we had to use that because we had to find out. Um, we wanted development to be, we wanted Goa's development to be transport based, because we do not want to see the kind of crowding we have today, where everybody needed to have a two-wheeler because the
And
bus did
everyone
not get
everyone is moving to the urban areas and making the full state unbalanced in its spread.
Yes, I mean the bus does not go to the Mofassil area. Say Britana, a bus will pass to Britana, but the bus will not pass from Britana to Porvorim to Panjim. They have, later MLAs and whatever have started a bit of this kind of thing, but they are few and far between. But we wanted public transport to be really public, so that people don't go in for two-wheelers and four-wheelers and choke the roads. Because
That's a very interesting debate, and I'm glad that you mentioned it because I've been through your study. I remember maybe it's in my collection of Goa books or whatever. I've seen it a long time back, and I think it's an important contribution to the Goa debate But having said that, if we for those who just joined us, we are talking to Eric Pinto, who is an engineer and environmental activist, and this is part of the series of Goa's runaway politics and how it's affecting Goan life in general, regardless of parties and politicians. So Eric, we were talking about say real estate and about transport. Which are the areas where are hugely inefficient, untrustworthy, way politics works is actually affecting life in Goa?
It's it's the land mafia today. I mean, that's affecting life in a huge way. You see,
Does it affect your profession? Does it affect your profession in terms of permission, in terms of who comes up and who can do what
yeah, it
work? And
it does affect our profession, because I mean we are in the building trade, have got to take a conscious the decision whether we are environmentalists first, or whether we are adjuncts to the builder lobby. As engineers, we have to provide services to the builder lobby. So we have to then decide whether we really have to do this, and sometimes we opt out and we say no, I do not want to be a part of it. And if someone in the village wants to build a small house, then that's what we will help with. We will not work with big builders. So it's a conscious decision that sometimes we have to take.
hmm. So in that sense, even in terms of permissions and all, you have seen a change in the discussion that's going on, the
It's
tone.
it's not an engineer who so much does the permissions. The permissions are normally an architect's field. But we do. I mean, there are a lot of engineers who also double up as this kind of. It does happen. As a sort of, as I said, as adjuncts to the builder lobby or whatever, we do have our we do have our people who, they say, I've heard it from many, and they say, I've heard it from an architect who's a very good friend, who said, if Eric, if I did not do it, somebody else would have done a worse job. And it's blatantly illegal, but he has done it.
Eric, I know a issue close to your heart is the environment, and you have founded the Goa Green Brigades. Goa Green Brigades, unlike the Red Brigades of Japan, it's not a violent army. It's not, but it is a campaigning army, which army quote unquote, which takes up campaigns of the causes of trees and a whole lot of things.
Trees.
Yeah.
Mainly, we focus on the green cover.
Two questions. Two questions.
Yes.
Tell us, maybe that's the second question. Some of your highlights of the campaigns that you've done on this WhatsApp group, which is quite effective in networking people who share a concern on the environment. But before that, how is politics in general affecting the environment of Goa?
See, the spillovers of politics. Politics by itself is the spillover of politics affects the, you know, today, if you look at the highway, if you look at our highway, do you know how it has divided villages? You enter Goa, you do not know whether you are in Goa or in any other state. The highway just takes you along. But there, besides that, we don't realize that if you want to go from one part of the village to another part of the village, you have got to go through an underpass, and compulsory so. And the underpasses are few and far between. They are not. So sometimes you have to take a big detour to go from one part of the village to another part of the village. And that, I think, has been, we have not realized it yet, because the highway is still in construction. It's nearly over, but it has not hit us. So
While on this point, would there be scope for fears that this huge concretization of certain parts of Goa, whether it is Bamboli, whether it is Giri,
yeah,
building of huge structures along the roads, which incidentally are north south roads in many cases, and our rivers are flowing from east to west
Yes,
into the sea.
exactly.
So could these things act as dams in the way and cause flooding like how we've seen last year
It
in places
has
like
it
Giri?
has happened in Giri. It has happened in Giri because this highway in this particular highway. Now this is the one that I know firsthand. They went and blocked a river course, a water course that connects Giri almost with the Baga Creek. If you go all down the road, and you can see it on a map, on the old Portuguese maps, if you look, you see that the Creek comes right up to Giri, and then it joins up with the Mapsa River. So now they have blocked it up there, and with the result that there are floods. And there have been, I remember the floods even in the 80s, because our highway, when our highway was being widened, back in those days, they had done the same thing. They blocked it, maybe put a culvert which was not sufficient to ensure that the water flowed freely in the monsoons. And the moment you don't do that and you have very heavy rains, then there's a blockage and the water is not able to move freely from one side to the other and it causes floods on both sides. And that's what I remember even in the 80s we used to have floods at that particular point. This year it got worse and the Giri Panchayat actually was inundated. I mean they
The panchayat building,
the
which is
Panchayat
which is
the
almost in the
Panchayat
fields
building
itself,
at
which is
Giri.
almost in the fields. Yeah,
Yes, which is almost in the fields. Was nobody could ever enter the panchayat until the waters, really went down. So this has been this is how politics or development in general. The word development is such a all-embracing word that people fall for it. But
it's
when
a
you
hazy
look,
word. It's a hazy word. The origins of the word are very vague, which
it's a yeah,
apparently
it's a
started in
very
the
hazy word and
1940s.
it's a very
It basically has come to mean some kind of infrastructure building in a way that helps industry, not that takes care of people's needs. So you
no.
build some controversial
Maybe it
project.
doesn't help only industry. Maybe it helps some people, but then it helps only a very few people. I do remember even when the Chogam Road was being built, we had our first. But I mean, even the widening of the road that happened between Mapsa and Saligaon, when all those beautiful trees along both sides were chopped down, I mean, that is by itself. I don't. Did we need to have such a wide one with pavements on either side that nobody uses? I don't see, it has been an environmental disaster for the reason that people from one side cannot also move to another side if the traffic is very high. But besides that, the very beauty of that avenue has been lost. Now, do you know what's happening? There's one little stretch left that's between the Parra Junction and the Parra Church. And I've been on that road a few times. And do you know how many tourists come to just see the coconut trees on both sides? And they take pictures and they take videos, and it's part of the movie thing. If a movie wants to be shot and they want to get this beautiful scenery of trees on either side of the narrow road, it's not very large, but it allows two cars to pass.
I
They
know what you're
come,
talking about. I know what
they
you're
come
talking
to
about.
Parra and they do the movie there.
It has been shot in many movies and it has been glamorized and it's part of advertisements. And what
Yes,
you're saying is true that ironically, what was part of Goa is now become, got museumized, if you want to use that term. And it's become something exotic. And, tomorrow we'll just have to encounter our own heritage in the museums. And part of the reason is because of this cavalier attitude towards so called development, which just
development.
means like, not calculating the cost of our environment, but just thinking that the only thing that feeds us is like industrial growth
Yeah.
or infrastructural growth, that too of a dubious kind. Talking about which, I recently saw this video, which is from this Mad Lips or something like that. It's a place where you can sync someone else's speech with your own voice. So they've taken Donald Trump and they put him there, and they get
Oh,
him to
yes.
speak Konkani. They get him
Yes.
to speak Konkani. I know why you're laughing, because you know what's coming. And Donald Trump is telling these guys, "Tumka cold so naka, tumka ye naka, tumka te naka," and he's talking with an American Konkani accent. They got it
I know.
quite nicely. So he's castigating them for not wanting coal. Okay, you don't want coal, you don't want this, you don't want that, you don't want
Yeah.
development. Then
What do you want?
what are your youngsters going to do? Are they going to watch toilets in London? Because this is
Yeah.
actually the discourse that our politicians use sometimes, no, here,
Exactly.
to justify the most controversial of controversial things.
Yes.
In that sense, yeah. So, Eric, the next point which I was just trying to raise is that tell us about your. I find it pretty interesting. Your Green Goa group. First of all, how do people get onto it? I think they have to send you a WhatsApp message on your number, which is +91 what? +91
Plus, this is plus 9 750
750
7366
7366
788.
788. I hope I got that correct. You can check it and then we'll put it out there. But apart from that, what are the kind of issues you've taken up on? If anyone wants to join the Green Goa group, they can get in touch with Eric on this number, and Eric will add you to the group.
Yeah.
It's quite a ruckus group like how WhatsApp groups sometimes tend to be, but it's a very useful group because it puts you in touch with environmental issues. I think you founded it with our journalist friend Avertino Miranda.
Avatino.
Tell us
The
what issues.
Avatino is much more active in the field. He's
Fine.
much more. I mean, day before yesterday he went to Asagaon where there's been a lot of tree cutting and unfortunately a lot of land has been sold to builders. And Asagaon is such a beautiful village. It's another kind of there have been a couple of villages that have been sort of usurped by the builder lobby. One was Moira in Aldona, I think was the first. Aldona started this thing. It went on to Moira. Uh, then it has moved to Asagaon. Asagaon is the next destination, which is very much sought after. So there are lots of plots now being felled of trees, and there are now either big bungalows coming up, or building colonies, or bungalow colonies, or actual colonies of buildings.
I get your point. What you're saying, without saying it in as many words, leaving it to us to understand, is that all this could not happen without the political, kind of complicity
No,
of our elected representatives who want a certain kind of development, quote unquote, to happen, who want a certain kind of economy to take place, who want certain kind of laws which don't take care of people's housing needs, but which take care of real estate speculation, for example.
no, not
Anyway,
only speculation. It's actually a quid pro quo. You bribe me, and I will give you this plot of land and whatever. I'll get the owner to sell it to you for a song, and you put up a big structure there, flout the rules, do whatever you want, and then that's how I get my money. And this has been taken to a finesse level in Taligaon. I
by
remember
hook or by crook,
Taligaon, because
by hook by
Joyce,
crook.
my wife, comes from Taligaon. And I
I see.
remember going there. We married in 1989. I remember going in 89. And it was such a beautiful village because the houses were only on along the main road. And there were fields beyond that little stretch, there were fields. Those fields have now gone.
And those
And
fields were
between
very planted and very green till a few years back.
Yes, till a few years back, till about 10 years back. Now see, 89, between 89 and now we're in 2020. I would say in the last 20 years, something like 2000, the kind of development in brackets that has occurred has finished up the groundwater because all septic tanks have just polluted all the wells, and there aren't any wells anymore. Every inch of space has been taken up by a housing colony, and now they have had to depend on water supply from the PWD, and the PWD keeps on giving water to every building. And we that's what I would look at today is the shortage of water that has been created by overdevelopment. Today, we could get water either from our wells or from a tap for several hours a day. Today, it's only 2 hours or whatever. Then you got to wait for the tap water supply. If you're lucky, you get your sump full. If you're not, you have to depend on a tanker. My colony here in Ribanda gets about 15 tankers every day.
I see.
because we are not able to suffice with the PWD water supply. And I mean all along this road also, I mean a lot of the houses do not have PWD water supply.
Interesting. So tell us about, I mean, someone is asking what's today's topic. So it's easier to spell it out than to type it out. So basically, we are doing a series called Goa's Runaway Politics, and looking at the impact of these politics on life in Goa, and how it cuts into the life of everyone, regardless of which party you support or don't, regardless of which party is in power or not, regardless of who's jumping onto which side or when. So like basically from a people's eyes perspective of politics in Goa, particularly from voices which are less heard or not so much heard, shifting the agenda from who's going to win, who's going to form the government, to more of people's issues. While we are at it, I'm also taking advantage of Eric's presence here to discuss certain issues which he has a deep insight into. Eric, tell us about your Green Brigade group, WhatsApp group, and the issues it has taken up since its formation not too very long back ago, maybe a year and a half,
No, no,
2 years.
no. This is about Green Brigade. We started with Green Brigade, and then we had to start Goa Green Brigade because there's a limit on the WhatsApp members. I mean, there are. I think it was at the time it was about 200 and something. So
256,
when it
256,
crossed
yeah, yeah.
over that, we started Goa Green Brigade.
So you have two groups now.
Yeah, we have Green Brigade and Goa Green Brigade. Green
Okay,
Brigade was the original one.
okay. So what are the issues that you all have taken up?
The issues basically are tree cutting. The issues are basically tree cutting, but we also go into land filling, unauthorized land filling, illegal land filling. Then we go into litter on the beach. We go into little anything that someone feels is environmentally bad and reports to us. Then we put it up as a post. Then people either get a little more aware, or they say, okay, we should do this or we should do that. And then a few of us then either take it forward. Other thing is the what call it the acting arm of the thing today. He's the one who takes most of the this thing. We have even gone to court. I mean, he has taken some
Who's
of
that?
the tree cutting. We have gone to the forest department, and we have also said because many of the trees are being just hatched. Like there are hatchet jobs done on trees, and then they later on die because they don't have enough of foliage to this thing. And we have gone to the forest department and said, no, we have to find out ways and means to ensure that people don't cut trees, and even the government doesn't cut trees haphazardly. And there's a certain system to how you cut a tree or prune a tree. Branches are being cut, but in the act of cutting branches, they chop off most of the tree, so that what remains is not able to sustain itself, and the tree ultimately dies. So we have done that very effectively. And I mean, we had a forest conservator about 2 or 3 years who was very pro tree, and he used to
Who's
help
that?
us a
What's his
lot.
name? What's his name?
I can't get his name. Names are
Okay,
something I don't.
you
I
don't know
really
offhand. That's
can't.
fine. That's fine.
3 years
Uh,
ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
so this WhatsApp group has actually been useful to act as a kind of emergency alert, to wake up one another and to activate each other, saying that there is a problem in certain areas. Please go
Yes,
there.
exactly, exactly.
Okay, very interesting.
So it wakes up. But we have also gone into the politics of, now if you see, the environmental part is maybe 20 to 25%, and the political part. But we do not see, no, don't discuss, because we know that politics has influenced environment so much that we allow political views to be on board, and most of the time it is anti-politician, and it does not say only XYZ politician. Now, today, the party in power gets the most stick. So we allow that to be. But there are a lot of us who say it's not only that, it was the previous government also, the previous party also who ruled Goa, that has to take an equal amount of blame for the beginning of the deterioration in our environment.
Everyone has contributed to it. They all deserve credit.
Everybody has contributed to it. So we
So
don't differentiate, and we ask the people to be careful, at least in our groups. See that you vote wisely. But I mean, today it's very difficult to tell anyone, an environmentalist, someone from my own, someone whom I sort of worked with, Roshan Matthias is now standing in Kalangut. He was in the same morning. Of course, he came in later, but he was very active. Then there's another friend, Captain Viryat Fernandez, who's also. I mean, he decided to join Congress because he found that he did not have the money power to this thing, and he got the Congress he got the Congress to listen to what he wanted to say about the environment in Goa. And I remember Chidambaram promising at the venue where he was inducted that we will ensure that the environment of Goa is spared the kind of degeneration or that we'll have a more fruitful discussion about projects. We will reverse what has been done. I don't want to praise any person, but Viriato got a certain agenda pushed down the Congress.
in such a situation, Eric, what does the citizen do? What are the ways out? Is there any kind of rearguard action that a citizen can fight, can
One is
wage
RTI.
to
No, I
safeguard
mean
their own interests?
we are on the
Whether it's
RTI
RTI,
is a
whether it's
very
RTI or anything. Sorry, sorry.
RTI is a very potent tool to sometimes put into dock the people who have committed a crime, environmental crime, or whatever. They then, because file notings or whatever, what transpired comes out, because it's once in the government file, it's sealed. Nobody knows what has happened. But an RTI inquiry brings up what happened at the time, and then it's in the public domain, and then you say, okay, this is what happened, and we'll not allow it to happen again.
Yeah. So, just tell me one thing about maybe we take a little while to discuss the range of environmental movements in Goa, and particularly the ones you were interested in. Just bullet points, so that people get it, because this is often forgotten. This history is often forgotten.
Yeah, this history is always forgotten. The biggest one has been the Goa Foundation. The Goa Foundation, since its inception, when was it? When Claude started it? Was it late 70s, early 80s?
Mid
It,
80s,
it
more
has
like
been
maybe
the
mid
most
80s. Yeah.
Yeah, it has been the most. It has done the most work in the environmental field.
But to go back a bit in time, your first brush with environmentalism came about through Urban Lobo Matani Saldana.
Yes, it came about with that, but it was at that time, it was the citizens, anti-pollution citizens. It was a citizens committee. It was people who felt that environmentalism was required to be. Now, see, Urban came from Britain. He came in the 70s, in the early 70s or the late 60s. He came from England, and where environmentalism over there was a very it was a field that was being sort of practiced very much. And he came out to the game came down to Goa, and he found that we are in the start of a wave where environmentalism, if it not addressed, where if we do not look at the environment, so many years down the line, we were actually going to be, we would be degraded.
So you were involved
Environment.
with them.
He
You were
meant that.
involved with them in which movements specifically?
Pardon.
You were involved with them specifically in which movements?
I
Where
was
did you?
involved with them in the first one, in the Zuari Agro Chemicals movement. Then I was involved with Patani in the Rampunkar movement, very much involved. In fact, myself and Avitin were very much in the Rampunkar movement. From there, it went on to other ones. I was not, of course, I was not at all in the mega strips movement by the time. I was not this thing. But there were other movements. There were other movements like Nylon 66, which we in Grid. Grid was by then Goa Research Institute for Development was formed. It was formed by a group where Matani also was a part. Urban Lobo and Father Father Falero,
Braz, Braz,
they were
Falero,
the
Braz, Braz.
Father Braz Falero. These three were instrumental, and Braz and Urban. Urban was always the, he planted the seeds of an idea. Maybe he never projected himself, but he planted the seeds of
He
an
was the
idea.
brains of the movement. He was the brains of the movement.
He was the brains of the movement, and and he used to provide even the Konkan Railway realignment movement. I mean, he was the. Of course, I deferred when I did a study for them for grid. When I really went to study, I differed on with them on many issues about the hinterland route.
Hmm.
But I don't want to go into that.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. So, you mentioned Matani, okay, and apart from Goa Foundation, Claude, Norma, Matani is one of the big movers and shakers of environmental movements in Goa. Though I
Yes,
must hasten to add that Matani, the environmental campaigner, is different from Matani Saldana, the almost deputy chief minister of Goa as a politician. That's a different phase of his life, but his role to the movements has to be acknowledged in that sense.
acknowledged, definitely. I mean, his role to the movement has got to be definitely acknowledged because he was the first politician to actually uh, take a stand for the environment.
So he made this issue. He would always say, I remember him for this. He would say, even before environment became fashionable at the global level, okay, UNEP and all this United Nations Environmental Program and all that. He said we were environmentalists in Goa right from 1975 and before.
Yes.
He was referring to the Zuari pollution issue.
Yeah, he was referring to Zuari. And
So,
and
so,
you,
so, so, my question, Eric, sorry for interrupting. My
no, no,
question
yes,
is,
go ahead.
in spite of all these years of environmentalism, in spite of so many battles taken up by the citizen, and as someone pointed out the other day, and it struck me as so true, the political parties have played very little role in even these movements. Even the opposition has played little role in supporting these movements. They were citizen led. The
Yes,
opposition was mostly like, I remember when the Konkan Railway was going on, the MGP, which was the main opposition, was supporting the Konkan Railway over which route they were discussing this thing, hinterland, coastal, whatever, whatever, whatever. But in spite of all these movements, why has the environmental agenda not seated so well on the Goan political scene in your view?
see, environmentalism, is not. I mean, where is the money? If you are favoring the environment today, you have to degrade the environment if you want to make money. And which side is the politician
True. So that's an
today?
interesting
Which side
answer.
is the
That's
politician?
that's
I mean,
that
this is a
that's a
very
very short
natural.
That's
It's
a
a
very
very
short,
natural.
succinct, and interesting answer. But I'd like to add one bit. It won't be fair to say that environmentalism is a failure. From two things. See, today at least the political parties are giving lip service to environmental causes. Now, whether they implement it or not, that's a totally different issue. But they are willing
Yes.
to say that we want to do this, we don't want these tree linear projects and all these kind of things. They are willing to say that. Secondly, the issues which were raised in the 80s, first by very tiny activist groups who were being laughed at in those days, whether it's tourism, over saturation of tourism and
Yeah.
mass tourism and things like that, are today on the lips and hearts of almost every Goan in that sense. They say, like, this is something we cannot cope with. So it took that many years for it to become a mass based discourse. Interesting. Just an observation. Carry on. Carry on.
No, that is true. But along with that, what has happened is that you don't have a voice anymore. I mean, look at what has happened to Kalangut. Look at what has happened to Kalangut. Do you have a voice over there? It was the today the beach is so dirty. There are bottles strewn everywhere. Every weekend, I mean, we have photographed bottles and uh, maybe people looking at them have then initiated cleanup drives and said, no, we have to clean the beach because ultimately this is where we earn from. So there has been uh, there has been a consciousness about the environment, but it has not gone down to a mass movement. It is still in pockets. It is still in pockets. It's with people who are maybe a little bit on the elite side who say no, and the environment is important. There's a big, very big other group that says no. Today, I mean, we don't mind tourists coming, and the more the merrier, the more the better, because our shacks and our little tea shops and whatever they get more business. So
You know,
then,
yeah.
so there's this dichotomy of we do not understand that there's a certain level at which degradation goes. I mean, people are beginning. I think it started in Portugal during the pandemic. They have realized that they have like like the beaches in Portugal have realized that there's something called a footwall. If it is over that,
Yeah, no, no,
if
you're online.
it is over
You're
there,
online.
then it is actually detrimental to everybody. Because I think today the cost of cleanup is more than the revenue that is being earned by tourism.
I just want to, sorry for interrupting. I just want to share with you a small digital poster which I received. Okay, this has come from Goa's ruling party, and they say that once known for its golden sand, because you mentioned Kalangut, once known for golden sand, today Kalangut is infamous for drug destination. And they are talking about the king of drug mafia in Goa. This is a individual who was their minister till a few
Yeah,
weeks, if not days back.
exactly.
So, like, I mean, who's condemning whom here? Yeah, going on here in that sense. So, like, it's
That's the jumping frog mentality, which we
it's totally
find
bizarre. It's
so
totally bizarre.
strange. I mean, today you have one fellow a person in one party, and he changes sides to a vertically opposite kind of a party, and is accepted without any qualms,
Hmm.
because he maybe is able to bring two other seats or three other seats along with him.
Yeah, but
So
Eric, the other side of the story is that when a opposition person goes into the ruling, or vice versa, the total accountability of the system has collapsed because
yes,
he cannot prosecute the same government he was part of. He cannot talk about corruption. He cannot talk about what's going wrong.
yeah.
So it's just a question of covering up for each other as
No,
long as they
I
are.
mean, no. You sometimes have this, but it's only in snippets. You will target something that you were not involved with, because I heard the same person talking about. Do you know the election commission has brought taxis from across the state? So all the taxis that the election commission people are using are not Goan taxis. This has been a huge grouse with the taxi operators. They said, why did they not use us? Because we are here.
Hmm.
And this point was caught on by Michael Lobo, and he said, see, the guy who's the devil in this thing has been mobbing with anyway, I don't know whether you want to edit this or not, but I do not like to get into personalities. But very conveniently targeting someone where he knows that he can do it, because it's not a recent. He was a part of the cabinet for all the other linear issues and all. So now, what does he say? He says, "What does he say? I'm not going to be with the linear issues. I mean, the
Right.
three linear projects."
The
So he
same thing
says,
which I
I
passed,
was a
the
part
same
of
thing
it.
which I spent so many years supporting. Today, I'm going to defend it. It's a kind of a, I mean, total contradiction in terms.
It's a
Uh,
contradiction in terms.
of course, it reminds me of the emergency in the 70s when the emergency was just ending, and a whole lot of former Congress leaders jumped into the Janta Party, which was just being
Yes.
formed, and we were schoolboys then getting out of school, and we thought how brave of them, how bold of them. Only later did we realize that they were just rats deserting a sinking ship, very
Yeah.
conveniently at that, to get another lease in power. and they
yeah.
actually did it quite successfully. But
Yes.
coming back to a wider issue, Eric, how do you see, maybe as we are winding up, maybe if you could have a vision of how do we empower the citizen? What is the way the citizen can take back some of their rights, if at all? We have no inner party democracy. We have a situation where defections, the central government tries to work about to bring about a law which seems quite foolproof, but then in Goa they find 101 ways of breaking it very efficiently. And inner party democracy, where all the candidates are dictated from Delhi or Calcutta or wherever the party is based, or the manifesto comes from there. There is no kind of bottoms up process where the views of the citizen are taken into account. And there are many other problems, of course, whether questions whether politicians really represent the voters and how effective they are, how effective the opposition is, all these issues. How, in such a situation, how does a citizen try to get even remotely empowered? Any suggestions?
Yes, that's where we have been working. I mean, I would take someone like Kalanan Mani and Sotter, and they have been saying, and there is not even the CSJP at some point of time has been saying, Panchayati Raj is the answer to a lot of our problems. Let people debate and decide on what they want at village level. And then it grows outwards. From village, it goes to district, and district, it goes to state. Let it start and let democracy start at the grassroots level. So today, there is, if you look, a lot more people go for the panchayat meetings than did in the earlier days because they have realized that at some point of at some level, if they do not uh, if they do not look at their village as a starting point of the hills, which befall our society today, then it spirals out of control. So I see a lot more people going for Gram Sabhas. And sometimes they are successful, sometimes they are hijacked because the local politician comes and he's got his stamp of authority on what he's going to be debated, and he can sometimes stop a debate. And I've seen it happen in a couple of panchayats where Pilen for one and Sukur for another, where the fiat of the politician in power is sort of through the secretary is manifested. So, but we now have to go back to those kind of politics where the village where the village people take the law into their hands and say, no, this is our village, we are going to decide. And if you are going to help us become better, then you better be on our side. I think it's slowly coming, but it's a slow process because sometimes a lot of us are hangers on to politicians, and we want to be their sidekicks. We say no, we do not want to say no. What is best for the village is got to be done, and not your particular agenda, which then favors a particular builder.
The
I
point
mean, I'm saying builder, but a particular agenda.
the point you raised is interesting because you mentioned Kalanan Mani, Sorted D'Souza, Peaceful Society, Gram Sabhas. I read their booklets, their tiny booklets which are still available online on
Yeah,
how to make the most of a Gram Sabha meeting. They had these booklets which focus in a Q&A format on what is a Gram Sabha,
yeah.
what are the rules, how to work on it, what are the requirements. Very insightful, no? Because these things are hardly discussed, hardly thought. So in that sense,
Yeah,
it's
but
always good.
if you really go to see, we got to start. This is the foundations of democracy. I mean, in India was Republic India in the olden days. We still were the first republics, maybe along with Greece. And I think we have to go back to those roots, and we got to say, we have to reclaim our heritage. We have
And
to
and
reclaim our voices.
an uphill challenge. I don't want to sound pessimistic at the ending.
No, I know. It's an
I I
absolutely
I
uphill challenge. It's an
I
absolute
agree. I
uphill
agree.
challenge. There's no doubt about it, but we have no options.
I
And,
agree with
and
your,
the one very nice thing that has happened out
yeah.
of this Monet project, out of this has been the role of the youth. And I have tremendous hope now because they have been largely youth driven. So if youth today starts to think about in these terms, there's nothing that can stop them. Today, the mole that if it has received all India, the mole projects and the mole, what to say, the mole activism, if it has got an impetus and if it's got received recognition from across the country, hats off to the youth because they have got onto the bandwagon, they have seen what it can do, and been the they have been the this thing of the solution, or they have got it down to a level where it has now become a problem to any government. It's not so easy. I mean, the
Yeah,
Congress had to say, if we come back to Goa, if we come back to rule Goa, we're going to roll back this three. The BJP cannot say it because I mean, they are the ones who initiate it. They may roll back parts of it and then they say no, we'll mitigate or the effects or something like that. But if you really go to see, it has been the youth it has been the youth that has driven this part of the activism.
I'm so glad that we are ending on an optimistic note, and of course, I also feel that rather than curse the darkness, we need to light a candle. Everyone making some attempt to change things is contributing. Maybe we should not look at just this once in 5 years exercise called elections, but we have to take on a responsibility 24 by 7, whenever possible, whenever the issue comes up. If we notice things right, Eric, you will definitely agree with me that the time when you and me were young in college, there was a whole lot of activism and social ferment going on there,
Yes.
and that subsequently has died down. And if anyone is to blame, it's probably our generation because we got caught up in our careers in other things and all that. But it's nice to see the youngsters also taking a serious interest in it, and as the situation goes worse on some counts, people are getting more active on other counts, so
Yeah.
there's always scope for hope. And thank you so much, Eric, for sharing all your experiences and your knowledge and your kind of long years of encounter with power and with protesting the abuses of power. And I think these are important lessons for all of us to learn. Thank you so much. I've taken a lot of your time. Tomorrow you're going to get a sore throat for speaking so much.
No, no, no. I don't know. Thank you very much. This is so interesting. I mean, I have been trying to think. We have been trying to think of economics that would favor the environment today. Uh, Green economics that would be viable. There's this guy Chris in our group, in our Goa Green Brigade group. He's been pushing us. He's saying casino money has been the source of evil. How do we get about it? Casinos have been banned in the West. There's been so much of problems because we are trying to now look at an economy which will be sustainable without this kind of ills, and that's our next goal. I mean, for
Interesting.
us, the elder generation, the youngsters are going to be in the field fighting the kind of wars that we did fight when we were students. We cannot do that. Our leg work is no longer working, but we can we can at least look at problems and say what we should do. There are a lot of people working on the green economy of Goa, and we should. I mean, that's something that we are looking at now.
A lot of positive hope. We need to keep our hopes alive. Thank you for your time once again.
Thank you
And
also
this,
very much. Thank you
and
very
this
much.
will end here. Good night.
Okay.
And thank you again for sharing. Bye.